Mimi's Bistro and Bakery, formerly Mimi's Café, is a restaurant chain that opened in 1978.
After a hard day at work, why not treat the hubby and the kids to a 3-course dinner at Mimi's Café, where everyone gets what they want? Come in now while Mimi's Just Enough 3-course dinners are only $12.99. Choose your own starter, then select from a variety of just enough entrees like salmon hollandaise and asparagus, or homemade meatballs with 4-cheese ravioli. Finish with your own petite treat dessert. Complete 3-course dinners only $12.99. So say meet me at Mimi's and get just what you want for less than you.
Arthur Sims grew up in Chicago, where his father ran small hotels and cafes during the 1920s and 1930s. Arthur J., as he was called by his friends and family, grew up during the Great Depression and served as a bombardier and navigator in World War II and had spent time at the end of the war in France. After serving time in World War II, he first became interested in opening up a restaurant upon his return to Chicago. His father-in-law was running some coffee shops in the city at the time, and he thought he could do the same. Armed with the idea, he moved to Los Angeles in 1948 and got a job running the commissary at the MGM studios for over 4 years, where he would charm some of the most influential players in Hollywood. A dashing and somewhat flamboyant man given to wearing a pink sport coat, Sims was well suited for Hollywood. In 1952, he would branch out on his own with his business partner, Bob Ehrman, serving up coffee from his coffee shop known as Ben Frank's on the Sunset Strip in Hollywood. 2 more Ben Frank's would open in the Los Angeles area, and Sims would also run another coffee shop chain called the Wooden Shoes. Arthur J.'s son, Thomas Sims, had no intention of following his father into the restaurant business. Rather, he earned his aeronautical engineering degree from the UC Santa Barbara in 1970, and however he graduated during poor economic conditions, he was unable to find an engineering job, so he opted to join his father. Among their ventures was a sidewalk cafe called the French Quarter, which they opened in West Hollywood in 1974. 2 years later, they acquired an upscale coffee shop known as the Kettle, located in Manhattan Beach. Unfortunately for the father-son enterprise, the prosperous days for coffee shops was beginning to fade, primarily due to higher rents that resulted in the need for a higher level of sales. Arthur J. and his son Tom were inspired by their trips to Paris and wanted to create their own dining spot. In December of 1978, Arthur J., his son Thomas Sims, Brian Taylor, and Paul Kurz opened the first Mimi's Café at 1240 North Euclid Street in Anaheim, California, near Disneyland. While pondering names, they knew they wanted a French woman's name since their casual dining spot would be a fusion of French and American cuisine, and initially considered the name Gigi. That's when Arthur suggested the name Mimi to Tom and explained the story behind it for the first time. Arthur had met a young woman named Mimi, around 20 years old, at a party honoring American soldiers. Mimi's Café was a new concept for the California restaurant scene and made it stand out. The casual cafe idea fused the style of a coffee shop and a restaurant together, something that wasn't really done before. The French-inspired bistro served fresh squeezed orange juice, oversized muffins, and dishes with exotic names such as œuf et pain perdu, fancy for eggs with French toast, which also offered fresh, hand-prepared comfort food and bistro classics for brunch all day, lunch, and dinner and celebrations. It would soon build a reputation for its breakfast crowd from the growing area. They became famous for their bakery items, including muffins and croissants, baked daily. The restaurant was a major success, leading the company to open a second Mimi's Café in 1981 in Garden Grove, California, followed by others in 1982 and 1983. The company then accelerated the pace for the next several years, opening a new Mimi's Café every 8 months. By 1989, the company had 11 of the restaurants in Southern California, generating close to $30 million in revenues. The company also continued to operate Ben Frank's, French Quarter, and The Kettle, which combined accounted for another $8 million in sales. There was no desire to franchise the concept of Mimi's Café, the partners preferring instead to maintain tight control, because Mimi's Café was not an easy concept to execute in the early 1990s. The company implemented a training program called Mimi's University. The 5-day program of lectures, books, and exams was geared toward new front-of-the-house employees. Not only did the program instill the chain's philosophy and provide detailed information about the menu and how dishes were prepared, it served to weed out people who were not likely to fit in with the culture. As a result, Mimi's Café dramatically decreased its staff turnover rate. Mimi's Café reached 16 units in 1993, at which point they decided to accelerate the pace of expansion. The company took on debt and opened up another 5 restaurants over the next 2 years. During this period, Mimi's began to update its decor. When the chain was founded, marketing studies showed that women were the key decision makers on where to dine, and in keeping with these findings, Mimi's Café featured a lot of pastel colors, which also worked well in the high-density areas where the early units operated. However, as the chain expanded into suburban and rural markets, the color scheme no longer worked as well, especially with men. As a result, the chain went for a mainstream look, opting for the more earth tones and primary color accents. Pink tablecloths and floral curtains were now replaced with green and white checked tablecloths and white curtains featuring stripes of primary colors. The chain also went for an even more rustic exterior look. With an accelerated expansion pace came a need to move beyond the Southern California market, where finding an appropriate real estate became more difficult. They first looked to Arizona, opening a restaurant in Scottsdale, and then made plans to open a Mimi's Café in Northern California, in San Jose. By this stage, at the end of 1995, the Mimi's Café chain was posting sales of about $50 million. They began harboring plans to spread the concept even further, perhaps taking it nationally, but such aspirations required help. In 1996, the company found a partner in Sandura Karp and McGrew, a private merchant bank that had previously owned the Marie Callender's chain and other restaurant companies and was known to take a supportive yet hands-off approach with its assets. SKM bought about 65% of the company, allowing the elder Sims, Kurz, and Taylor to cash out. Thomas Sims, on the other hand, retained his 35% stake and continued to run the operation. In addition to entering the Northern California market, the chain spread to Nevada, Texas, and Colorado. In targeting new markets, Mimi's looked for family-oriented suburban areas with a high density of 35 to 64-year-olds, markets where the company could potentially build a cluster of restaurants. Management continued to skew the idea of franchising, instead securing partners with extensive restaurant experience in the area who were given incentives for growing the business. In October of 2000, Arthur J. Sims died at the age of 82, marking the end of an era. By this point, his son Thomas was reaching the limit of his ability to manage a chain exceeding 50 units with national aspirations. Over the next 5 years, the Mimi's Café chain had more than doubled in size, entering 2001 with 49 stores and sales topping $141 million. He sought out the services of an executive able to take the Mimi's Café chain to the next level. In 2001, he recruited and hired Russ Bendel to serve as president and chief executive officer, while he stayed on as a chairman of the board. When Bendel took over in June of 2001, the Mimi's Café chain numbered 53 units. Over the next 3 years, the company added another 27 units, moving into new markets such as Kansas City and St. Louis, Missouri, Tampa, Florida, Salt Lake City, Utah, Oklahoma City, and Tulsa, Oklahoma. Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Colorado Springs, Colorado. By 2003, revenues had grown to $240 million. To achieve this growth, the company had to take on debt, which by 2004 had grown to more than $75 million. In May of 2004, the company filed papers with the SEC to make an initial public offering of stock in hopes of raising $85 million to pay down its debt, but it would never happen. Bob Evans Farms purchased the Mimi's Café chain in July of 2004 for $182 million. The Mimi's restaurant chain would peak with more than 140 restaurants in 24 states. The chain faltered in the years after when many new menu items were added and the new owners even began adding cocktail bars. In 2012, the struggling company began exploring options into selling the company. La Duff America bought the chain in February of 2013. The parent company also owns the La Madeleine restaurants. Their company headquarters moved from Irvine to Dallas. At the time of the acquisition, many locals applauded the return of many original menu items and a feel that is much more reminiscent of the original Mimi's and the recipes of the founder, Arthur Sims. As Mimi's president told the Register in 2013, "We're not taking Mimi's to a new place, we're taking her back to a place she was." The restaurants were renovated and its image soon overhauled. That overhaul included a handful of French-themed dining rooms for diners to discover more and different ways of enjoying Mimi's. The garden featured high wood beam ceilings and plants. The bistro is designed with warm lighting and dark woods for a romantic effect. The winery includes brick walls and exposed wood beams. The bar is full service with a brief selection of new and world wines, and the patio is intended to evoke the alfresco dining of a sidewalk cafe in Paris. In July 2019, the company rebranded as Mimi's Bistro and Bakery in order to reflect the company's desire to make Mimi's a destination restaurant where diners can sit down for a leisurely experience over food and affordable wine. By April of 2024, the company operated 44 locations. A year later, they currently have 42 locations in Arizona, California, Colorado, Florida, Missouri, Nevada, New Mexico, North Carolina, Ohio, Tennessee, Texas, and Utah. So what do you remember about this place? Leave a comment or a suggestion for a future video below. And if you haven't already, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, bringing back memories from the good old days. That's super cool, man.